Advance voting has already begun in the Christchurch East by-election. The seat left vacant by Lianne Dalziel after she left Parliament for the Christchurch mayoralty. Christchurch East is widely seen as a safe Labour seat, despite National getting thousands more party votes there than Labour in the 2011 general election. Lianne Dalziel was a popular local MP, but now there's a new candidate, a recent arrival to Christchurch, and of course, there's a new Labour leader. Our reporter Torben Akel looks at why the by-election's outcome is less certain than you might think.
Sunday morning in New Brighton on Christchurch's east coast. A serene scene that belies the upheaval many of these people have experienced over the past 3 years. Behind the pier, the New Brighton shopping mall, which was struggling before the quakes anyway, is now even more deserted. Not exactly fertile ground for the Greens' by-election candidate,
David Morehouse,
whose key campaign pledge is this.
3 years after the first earthquake, and we've still got way too many people living in substandard accommodation. That's not good enough. That's something I can do something about.
That and speeding up the revamp of the mall, two messages that resonate with local voters.
People just want to see things happen a lot quicker than what they actually have.
Look at the place. I'd just like to do it up a wee bit.
Oh, the plans are happening with this, but it'll be nice to see them actually start.
Just a few blocks inland start the suburbs the government has written off. The red-zoned streets that are usually close to the city's iconic Avon River and also primarily found in the Christchurch East electorate. Streets like these, from which, as you can see, many of the houses have now been removed, leaving uninhabited dead zones, the future of which remains unclear. Thousands of houses gone and up to 10,000 people with them, many of whom must have already left by the time of the 2011 general election, when just 29,000 voted in the seat, compared to more than 34,000 3 years earlier. And while Lianne Dalziel won the seat in 2011 with 56% of the vote, National won the party vote with 46% compared to Labour's 32%. Just as National won the party vote that year in all the other urban Christchurch seats. 2 years on, and with Dalziel now out of the picture, could that be repeated in this by-election? Could National's candidate finally claim what's been Labour territory since the 1920s? We joined Matthew Ducey while he canvassed in one of the wealthier parts of Christchurch East. And while he's talking down his chances of winning, he's certainly not ruling it out.
I've been door knocking now for 5 or 6 weeks and getting out and about and talking to voters. And I must say, you know, voters are very happy with the economy and with jobs and with growth. And people around here are very happy with National's commitment to the rebuild.
Now, when you say people round here, we're in a fairly undamaged, posh suburb, but what about the rest of Christchurch East?
Well, I think 2 things I'd say to that. First is you can't tell some of the damage in these houses by the outside facade. And, you know, I don't like this idea that, you know, Christchurch East is one sort of small homogenous area. It's a very diverse electorate.
It's true too that National's 2011 party vote victory wasn't restricted to the wealthier parts of the electorate. Polling booth data shows that it happened in even middle-class suburbs like North New Brighton and Avondale, though not because more people voted for them than in 2008, but because Labour's support was slashed in half. It was in the poorest part of the seat where we found Labour's candidate Poto Williams courting votes from passing cars. She told us the mood in the electorate's changed since Labour lost the party vote in 2011.
It's really very soon after the quakes, and I think the people were looking for some stability, so I could understand why the party vote went to National, because the population were looking for some comfort really, and that's what they felt they were given by the National government. Of course, that story has vastly changed, and there are people in this community particularly who are still hanging on to waiting for results from EQC and insurance.
Labour also has a new leader and is up in the nationwide polls compared to where it was 2 years ago. And it will be buoyed by New Zealand First's decision not to stand a candidate in this by-election. In 2011 they got 6% of the seat's party vote, in 4th place behind the Greens, who got 12%. The Greens, of course, are doing Labour no such favours. Their candidate unconcerned about splitting the left-wing vote.
I don't see it as a threat at all. A lot of people who voted for National in 2011 feel very let down by the John Key government. They promised that nobody would be worse off, and that is patently not true. So the Greens actually do offer a real option here.
National, meanwhile, could possibly lose some votes to the Conservatives, who got 2% of the vote last time and whose candidate, Leighton Baker, is the only one of the four we spoke to who stood in the seat that year too. So how conservative with a small c is Christchurch East?
It's a good question, and I would say Christchurch East is quite conservative in a lot of areas. Some areas are very non-conservative.
Of course, 2% is a long way from the 40 you usually need to win an electorate. Is this by-election more about 2014 and building your party's profile than actually winning this by-election?
Yeah, that's part of the goal, but I'm a little bit different than all the other candidates because I'm a practical, hands-on guy. Like straight after the earthquake, I brought my building team here. You know, we were digging long drops and short drops, and we were shoveling liquefaction. We actually saw what was happening in the hearts of people. And so when I see what's happening in Christchurch East now, it's 3 years after the earthquakes, a lot of them still haven't had any repairs done. Out west, people's houses have been fully repainted once or twice, their roads are smooth, all their sewage flows the right way. Out here is almost a forgotten suburb, and they need an advocate, a strong advocate that actually understands the building process, and that's what I can offer, which I don't think any of the other candidates can.
Indeed, the other three we spoke to are a software developer, a hospital administrator and a community worker. Though that's not to say their individual skills aren't applicable to the recovery too. Williams, for example, says she moved down from Auckland just 10 months ago to do exactly that. Do you think the people of Christchurch East will look upon the fact that you're not from Christchurch favourably?
Well, when I've gotten to talk to people about it, you know, initially there has been some concern. When I've talked to people about it and they've understood my reasons for being here, they've actually understood that in terms of my experience in working in the community sector, that I actually have the experience to work with people who've been through a traumatic event and who've experienced some hardship. And they totally warm to the idea of someone who's got some energy and some drive, who wants to work really hard for them.
And at least Williams now lives in Christchurch East, unlike the other three we spoke to. Both Morehouse and Ducey were keen to point out, though, that they may soon be living in the seat too, given the fact that its population loss means its borders will almost certainly soon shift outwards, possibly into the suburbs where Ducey and Morehouse live. Part of the nationwide review of electorate boundaries that the Representation Commission in Wellington started a month ago. Their proposed new boundaries will be released this Thursday, followed by 3 months of public submissions and hearings before the final electorate boundaries for next year's general election are released in the middle of April. It's even possible that this by-election could be the last race for a seat called Christchurch East, depending on which suburbs to the northeast and or south the new electorate incorporates. Irrespective of that and who wins in a fortnight's time, it seems likely we'll see more in future of at least one of the other candidates. Morehouse having beaten current MP Mojo Mathers to stand for the Greens, and Williams outflanking several better-known locals at a time when Labour's trying to boost its caucus's gender and ethnic diversity. Are you the face of that new policy, and do you think the voters will support it?
I'm actually the face of a very strident selection that happened. There were 6 very good candidates at the selection process, and this community and the Labour Party actually chose me to stand regardless of my gender and regardless of the fact that I'm a Pacific woman. I was the best candidate on the day.
Ducey, meanwhile, has National MP written all over him. Highly qualified, well-dressed, quick on his feet and somewhat prickly. And he's no fan of reverse discrimination either. Don't you think the National Caucus already has enough Pākehā males on it?
I don't know, you'd have to ask them.
Well, 2/3 Pākehā male when they only make up 1/3 of the population. I mean, what do you think about a party that's more representative of the national population?
Well, I think what we've got to look at is merit and, you know, people standing up and they're chosen for their merit. You know, like I said, I'm a Christchurch boy. I come from a background in healthcare where people come first. I've got a background in mental health, and I've worked with individuals and families, you know, supporting, listening and engaging them to improve their lives. And I think that's That's what matters.
What matters most in this by-election, of course, is that the people of Christchurch East actually vote. In the 5 other by-elections held since 2009, voter turnout has ranged from a half to 2/3 of the preceding general election. And while the incumbent party or member has always retained their seat, they've always gone into each race with bigger majorities than Dalziel. Majorities that have then been slashed in the by-election by between 34 and 57%. Yet more factors that make the outcome of this by-election all the more difficult to predict.
Torben Akel reporting there, and that story was edited by Hitendra Patel.